impartial decision makers are vital for public trust and compliance with the law. So there are rights of the applicant and there are rights of interested parties. The interested parties usually are members of the community. Also, another interested party could be labor groups, for example, that may stand to benefit from the project's approval because that will create jobs. So applicants and opponents of development applications have the right to a fair and impartial hearing before the city council or decision-making body. And later on, I'm going to talk about a case that actually deals with both sides of that issue that's happening right in our backyard right now. So this applies particularly to decisions that directly affect the personal and property interests of specific individuals and not just the general public. So we have to talk about then the distinction between a quasi-judicial action and a legislative action. So a quasi-judicial action is something, for example, approving or revoking variances, conditional use permits, subdivision maps. These require rigorous due process protections, including impartial decision makers, notice, and evidentiary hearings. Legislative actions are things that are more broad in public policy, and are not, so these are not subject to procedural due process requirements. And we're talking about things like zoning ordinance changes, general prohibitions like nuisance ordinances, things like that. But often when you have a large development project coming through, there's combinations of both. You have both quasi-judicial and legislative action. So you can't just say, well, if someone's asking for a zone text amendment or a zoning change in the general plan, that's a legislative action, therefore due process doesn't apply. Well, usually along with that, you have things like variances, conditional use permits, subdivision maps, things like that. So you're going to have quasi-judicial actions attached to that. And so when we talk about the action as a whole, that's why due process still matters in those cases.